4 historical facts about trade in the Philippines before colonization that professional archaeologists prefer not to mention in one sentence. Here's the strange part. Scholars talk about the Manila Galleon, this magnificent 16th century route between Acapulco and Manila. They mention dates, cargo manifests, and the Spanish vice kings who managed them. But they don't mention what Spanish administrators found ready for their arrival. These weren't empty coastlines, not passive fishing villages. This was a fully functioning commercial infrastructure with routes, pricing conventions, and trade partners that stretched so far west and east that the Spaniards spent decades just mapping what Filipino traders already knew by heart. The connection to the Aztecs lies within this gap, not as a conspiracy, not as a suppressed secret, more like something fascinating, a bureaucratic and logistical accident so vast that 2 civilizations conducted business across the ocean without acknowledging each other's existence. This is a story about traders who were better at their jobs than the empires surrounding them, about documents that shattered relationships they couldn't comprehend, about foolishness, institutional, spectacular, and almost cosmic in scale. Let's start with what can be measured. Pre-colonial Philippine politics, the networks of barangays, the Rajanate of Butuan, Cebu, and Manila, the Sultanate of Sulu, were not peripheral players in Asian trade. A copper plate from Laguna dated precisely to 900 AD mentions the settlement of debts related to gold, includes vocabulary borrowed from Sanskrit, Old Malay, and Old Javanese, and was written as a routine commercial document. Not a royal decree, just standard paperwork. This single artifact places Filipino traders in the Pan-Asian credit economy more than 6 centuries before Spanish contact. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Sulu traders operated on the western fringes of the South China Sea. The gold of Butuan, where Butuan produced gold on an industrial scale for its size, traveled through Borneo via Malaccan middlemen, through Arab and Indian trade networks that connected to East African ports. The chain was long, the chain was reliable, the chain had no central authority or single imperial sponsor. This last point is crucial. Now, across the Pacific Ocean, the Aztec Empire, formerly known as the Triple Alliance, though hardly anyone calls it that, controlled central Mexico with remarkable administrative precision. Tenochtitlan, in the early 16th century, held between 200,000 and 300,000 people. The tribute system supporting it was a logistical marvel. Goods flowed from dozens of subordinate peoples on strict schedules, cataloged in pictographic records known as the Mendoza Codex. Cacao, feathers, jade, obsidian, cotton, all accounted for, all taxed, all funneled through official channels. Let's continue. The Aztec state loved official channels. Here's the problem. Pacific trade had no official channels. It had Mactan, it had Sulu. It had networks of sailors descended from Austronesians who crossed the open ocean for 3,000 years before the Aztec Empire gained political significance. Stop. Think about that number. 3,000 years. While Polynesian navigators settled Hawaii and Easter Island, using stars, wave patterns, and bird migration routes as their tools, a civilization that would eventually build Tenochtitlan was still 15 centuries away from its foundation. The Pacific Ocean was not a barrier for Austronesian peoples. The Pacific Ocean was the road they built with knowledge, not stone. The question of whether Filipino traders made direct transoceanic contact with Mesoamerican peoples before the Spanish arrived is a topic historians discuss cautiously, while archaeologists debate loudly. The evidence is indirect, suggestive, and indeed contested. Sweet potatoes appear in Polynesia centuries before Spanish contact, and sweet potato is a South American crop. Chickens with certain genetic markers arrive in South America before contact with a Polynesian vector. Kumara, sweet potato, carries the Andean Quechua name, Kumara, which echoes in Polynesian languages as Kumara. Indeed, Kumara. These are data points, not proof. They are hints. The hint pointing specifically to the Philippines lies in something smaller, softer, almost embarrassingly mundane. It lies in the behavior of traders when they encounter bureaucracy they cannot surmount. Honestly, Filipino traders operating in the early Spanish colonial period did what repeatedly astonished colonial administrators. They did not resist Spanish trade monopolies with violence. They circumvented them. Quietly, efficiently, with the accustomed ease of people who had navigated imperial trade restrictions for generations. Spaniards called it smuggling. Filipino traders had a different conceptual basis. They called it trade, conducted as trade had always been conducted, namely through personal networks that moved faster than any state regulation. This model of behavior is ancient, provably ancient. The systems of Rajanats and Datu that organized trade in the Philippines before colonization were specifically decentralized. No single ruler controlled all maritime trade. Power was distributed through kinship networks, debt relationships, and systems of reputation that functioned over great distances without a need for a central clearinghouse. This structure, a decentralized, relationship-based, reputation-supported framework, is precisely what you need for conducting secret trade with a partner civilization that had its own political reasons for avoiding official recognition. The Aztec state, for all its administrative genius, had a specific problem with foreign goods that could not be obtained through tribute. Luxury goods from beyond imperial control required Puchteca, a specialized class of merchants who operated by their own guild rules, their own patron, and their own system of legal protection. Puchteca traveled to regions that the empire did not control. They traded in goods that the empire wanted but could not extract by force. They acted in many ways as a parallel commercial system operating alongside the official tribute economy. Now, note this. Puchteca also traveled secretly when necessary. They entered cities at night. They concealed their wealth. They reported to the emperor but protected their trade routes like intelligence services safeguard their sources. Two parallel classes of traders. Two systems specifically designed to bypass official channels. One ocean between them. By the way, the question of whether they met is almost less interesting than why this meeting, if it happened, would be kept secret from both sides. The answer to this question requires understanding something that academic historians sometimes underestimate. Bureaucracies destroy what they cannot classify. It's important to note that the Aztec tribute system had no category for transoceanic trade goods without an identifiable source. If the Puchteca returned with items from beyond the known world, the administrative system for documenting these items did not exist. Creating a category would require informing the emperor. Informing the emperor would require explaining the route. Explaining the route risked the route, because state knowledge in the Aztec system tended to become state property. Therefore, the Puchteca did what trade guilds do when bureaucracy threatens their business model. They kept documentation unofficial. They described foreign goods in local terms. They traded on the edges. On the Philippine side, the structure of incentives acted in exactly the same direction. Philippine trading networks gained a competitive edge through information asymmetry. Sulu traders who dominated certain corridors of spices and gold did not publish their navigational maps. A Datu with ties to a specific Chinese trading house did not advertise those ties to competing states. Information was inventory. If transoceanic contact existed, and cumulative indirect evidence suggests that something moved across that ocean before the Spanish ships made it official, then secrecy was not enforced by fear of punishment. Secrecy was a professional standard. Both sides simply conducted business as serious traders always do. The arrival of the Spaniards in 1521 did not create these trading networks. The arrival of the Spaniards disrupted them, documented fragments, and then reorganized what survived into the Manila galleon system. An official, taxable, empire-sanctioned version of trade that Filipino and Mesoamerican traders had conducted unofficially for an indefinite time. By the way, if you find such stories interesting, the stories that live in the gaps between official records, consider subscribing. The history we tell goes on long after the lifespan of any single empire. Look, the part that was erased wasn't erased out of malice. It would have made the story better, but that's not exactly true. The gap in documentation exists because three separate bureaucratic systems, the Aztec, the Spanish colonial Mexican, and the Spanish colonial Philippine, each classified the same commercial reality according to their own administrative logic. Records don't match because those keeping them were solving different problems in different languages for different imperial audiences. What remains? Artifacts, genetic traces and cultures, linguistic echoes. The stubborn fact that when Spanish administrators arrived in the Philippines, they found a commercial civilization already operating at a level of complexity, suggesting centuries of relationship management and long-distance trade. Here's what makes this significant beyond a historical puzzle. Every civilization that achieves commercial scale eventually faces the same tension. The trader who builds a route and the state that wants to tax it have fundamentally incompatible definitions of success. A trader's success is relationships: personal, flexible, unnoticeable, adaptable. A state's success is revenue: classified, documented, consistent, controlled. Pre-colonial Filipino traders resolved this tension by building networks that the state could not fully see. This was not a weakness. It was a form of institutional intelligence that outlasted every empire that tried to contain it. The Spaniards came, the Dutch came, the route survived, the Aztec Empire vanished. Every empire that attempted to monopolize trade in the Pacific disappeared. The Austronesian maritime tradition that produced these pre-colonial Philippine trading networks is still here. In navigational knowledge, in kinship-based commercial culture, in the stubborn Filipino commercial instinct that has placed Filipino diaspora communities in the economies of over 100 countries. Empires get monuments. Traders get the world. Let's continue. The history that bureaucrats could not record is the history that truly moved goods, moved people, and moved civilization across the largest ocean on Earth. It moved quietly. It moved through relationships. It moved like water flows over stone, not by force but by finding every available path until the stone remembers it was never a barrier. It's important. The archives that survived are fragments. The archives that mattered were never written. They lived in the memories of navigators who read the stars with their bodies, in the handshakes of Puchteca entering foreign cities at midnight, in the gold from Butuan that flowed into ports whose administrators recorded its origin simply as from the East. From the East, as if that explained anything. As if the East wasn't 10,000 miles of the most complex maritime civilization the ancient world ever produced. That's what was erased, not a conspiracy. Not a plan. Just two groups of bureaucrats filling out forms in the wrong language while the traders they tried to tax quietly continued building the world.